Today, I want to talk about the murder of Charlie Kirk, why it impacts me so much, and how my own personal practices that I teach to people all around the world are so important right now. I want to start by sharing an extremely vulnerable personal story with you that has nothing to do with Charlie Kirk or politics. Back in 2006, I was living in my first apartment by myself. I had left the town I lived in. I had left my childhood friendships and relationships. I had broken up with my longtime girlfriend. And I was alone in a new town with new friends and an entirely new life. And I had not done any conscious work on any of my traumas. At this point in my life, I was still hiding my breasts, which had developed from being intersex. I was duct taping them actually, so I could see what it was like to walk around without people seeing that part of me or knowing that from my history, and it felt very liberating. I was experiencing rest and peace and ease for the first time in my life after a childhood of insomnia from PTSD. My PTSD came from many different things. When I was 5, I was molested at a urinal. When I was 2 and 3, I went to a very abusive daycare. And when I was in middle school, I had experienced 3 different accounts of sexual assault from 3 different people, as well as endless bullying and hatred because of being intersex, having breasts, and being very feminine. I was always a bisexual kid and bisexual adult, so people could pick up on my difference and used it against me a lot. And I really hated myself because of it. So I spent a lot of my childhood in a very dark place. Even though I had a really beautiful, loving mother and good family and some good friends, especially as I would get older, internally I was always suffering and struggling. And I never consciously processed any of this. I pushed it all to the back of my mind. And then one day, as the internet was becoming more and more available and there was different social media and MySpace accounts, I remember coming across the news that someone who had sexually assaulted me in middle school had died. And my mind thought I should be happy. My mind thought I should be relieved, because whenever I went back to my hometown, I'd be terrified of seeing him or the people that he told. Because for me, what happened with this particular case, this particular event, was he sexually assaulted me in my house. And then the next day went to school and told everybody in school that I came on to him and he had to defend himself against me. So this rumor spread in school very quickly, and I was instantly branded as a faggot, instantly branded as queer, which was not a cool word then, and was hated for the next 4 or 5 years, viciously bullied, endlessly tormented. People would literally beg me to kill myself. I remember a boy coming up to me with a quarter and a nickel saying, "Is this enough? If I give this to you, will you end your life?" People hated me that much because a boy told people I came on to him and he had to defend himself, when really he sexually assaulted me. So it was a very multi-layered experience, a lot of betrayal, a lot of pain, a lot of confusion, and then years and years of bullying and being hated. So he had a lot of power in my mind and body. And that continued, into my late teens and early 20s. And when I found out he had died, I thought I would feel relief. And the first thing I did was notice this pang of grief in my heart, which confused me. Why am I grieving this person? And I picked up my guitar. I had this beautiful red electric guitar at the time that my grandfather had given me. And I had it open tuned. Open tuning is like this style where you can strum it and it makes these beautiful kaleidoscopic sounds. Joni Mitchell used a lot of open tuning. So did Buffy Sainte-Marie, Ani DeFranco, some really pioneering female guitarists use open tuning and males. But I'm thinking of my women that raised me musically. And I sat down, and interestingly enough, it was tuned to her song from the album Clouds called I Don't Know Where I Stand, which how incredibly foreshadowing looking back, because to this day, I don't really focus on where I stand. I focus on where I am and how I feel. So here I am strumming these open chords, this open tuning of I don't know where I stand. And I'm strumming this through my amp because it's electric guitar, and it's kind of filling the room. I have this big, tall room in this apartment, and it's filling it, and I'm hearing cars outside on the street, and my body's just being kind of aroused and soaking in this sound. And I suddenly feel all my love for this person. I suddenly feel how much energy it took throughout my entire childhood to fear him, to hate him, to dehumanize him, to feel disgusted by him. I would later be told in multiple sessions by multiple therapists that I should hate him, that I should be angry, that I should want revenge, that I should want to hurt him. And I think what they're trying to say is if I had, it'd be normal. They were trying to unshame that, which I agree with, by the way, because the animal's fight response is very real. And when you're assaulted in such a dehumanizing way, your fight response is thwarted. So later on, it can come out and be very vengeful and aggressive. But I didn't have it. I just didn't have it in me. I often joke, I'm not a fighter, I'm a flighter. And I'm not a fighter, I'm a fawner. I rather fawn, I rather flight before I fight. That's just how I roll. And I was feeling into this pain, and I realized it hurt me more to hate him. It hurt me more to dehumanize him, to call him a rapist, to call him disgusting, to call him sadistic, to have all these terms, and then more I would learn in my years of therapy later. That hurt more than just feeling this was another human. He affected my life. He effectively, at a certain period, ruined my life. And I would argue for my own experience and from my own experience, my hating of him and dehumanizing of him ruined my life more than the event did. I can say that with confidence. So I open with that so you can understand where I come from. My rehumanizing practice started by accident at 19 when I found out that the boy who sexually assaulted me had died, and I felt love for him. In that moment, accidentally, with the help of music and Joni Mitchell, initiated me into this radical practice of rehumanizing regardless of the person or what they do. And I'm going to walk you through how this is coming back up for me now in the wake of Charlie Kirk's murder. I first want to say what humanizing is not. Humanizing isn't agreeing. Humanizing is not acquiescing. Humanizing has nothing to do with fawning. It's not about not having boundaries. And it's not about even liking or wanting to be around somebody. Humanizing is when I release the parts of me that start creating a wall against someone, and I question the stories and the bias and the media and any proof I get that further justifies and enables my dehumanizing of a person. For me, dehumanizing someone is when I take a piece of them and make it the whole story, the whole identity. We do this to ourselves all the time. As a somatic therapist and practitioner, I've learned over the years from people, all tens of thousands of people all over the world, that we dehumanize ourselves by over-identifying with our self-states. For example, someone might come to me and say, I'm anxious. I'm an anxious mess. I'm depressed. I'm unmotivated. I'm lazy. They identify their whole being and their whole life with a state, a sensation that lives in their body. Peter Levine, who developed somatic experiencing, has this incredible practice, well, really an incredible term, not really a practice, but a term called pendulation, which is when he describes the body's ability to modulate between different resonances, different stages of sensation. For example, a part that's constricted and a part that's not. I've developed his philosophy around pendulation into a practice that I call active pendulation. Active pendulation is when you actively look for different sensations in the body that are opposing, that are opposites, and you breathe with them, you move with them, you give them your attention, you pendulate between both of them. So someone will come to me and say, I'm anxious. And I'll say, okay, where do you feel the anxiety? And they'll say, in my chest. And I'll really ask them to track it. Like, how big is it? How much space does it take up? And most people find that most of the anxiety they feel is just this little but very profound and potent feeling of anxiety, of tension, of pressure let's say, for example, in the middle of the chest. It can be the stomach, the face, the jaw, but in this case, I'll use the chest, for example. And when they go there with their hand, when they put their hand there and their attention there, they start to realize, oh, wow, there's only 5 or 10% of my whole body that actually feels anxious. So it's way more accurate to say, I have anxiety in my chest compared to I'm anxious. You see? When you say I'm anxious, you identify the whole of you with one little part of you. You dehumanize yourself because your humanity in your body is way more complex than that. So someone will I'll usually ask people, you can do this with me right now. Actually, let me do this with you in real time so you can feel it for yourself. Find a place in your body that holds tension. You don't even have to know what it is, but just notice, and you can use your face, throat, chest, solar plexus, rib area, and belly. This line usually is where we feel the most when we have overwhelm or tension that we're carrying. And put your hand wherever you feel tension. You may have several places, but just start with one. And just give it a moment to tell itself to you, to tell you its story. What's the emotion there? Is there an image? Is there an event? Is there an upcoming worry? Let's just give it 30 seconds together to feel. Now, whether that sensation told you anything or not, doesn't matter. But just notice you feel it. You might have more information. And now, what else is happening in your body? Where do you feel pleasure? Where do you feel peace? Where do you feel a sense of ease or even neutrality? And put your other hand there. So one hand is over the place that's tense. One hand is over a place that's less tense or has no tension. And if it's hard to find that place, use your eyes to look around the room where you are and see if you can feel or if you can visually see something that's lovely or pleasant, and then where you feel that thing in your body. And we'll take another 30 seconds to feel that together. So if you're able to do this right now, not everyone is, but if you're able to, you're finding a place that's tense and a place that's either less tense or has no tension. This is the beginning of active pendulation. This is the beginning of humanizing yourself, of realizing how many opposite truths, opposing truths, even contradictory sensational truths live in your body. There can be anxiety in the chest and at the same time total peace in the stomach, for example. Now we're going to do the active pendulating of swinging back and forth between these. So take a breath and press your hand into the place that's tense and just give it your attention for a few seconds. You're not fixing it. You're not trying to figure it out. You're just letting it be here with you. Then on your next breath, go to the place that has less tension, the place that's more open, more peaceful. Press into it a little bit with your hand and give it your breath and your attention for a few seconds. Again, not trying to change it, figure it out, do anything about it, just letting it be there. We're going to do it one more time with each. So swing back over to the place that has tension, press into it, give it your breath, give it your attention for a few seconds. And then finally swing over to the place that has less tension or no tension, give it your pressure with your hand, breathe into it. And then let your hands go, move your shoulders, look around the room a little bit. That's pendulation. It's very simple, but it's quite profound. And if you didn't feel anything or you need more time, pause this or go back to the practice and try it out. I'm opening this whole discussion around Charlie Kirk up with this because it's really important to physically feel what I'm talking about. When people learn how to pendulate back and forth between their own contradictory opposing sensations, they start to feel more whole. This practice saved my life. I started to feel like I had more capacity. I started to feel a wholeness, a complexity within myself for myself. But what's fascinating about the human body, and it seems like a mystery, but I think it's just alchemy. When you give equal attention to opposites, they start to merge. So they don't live in exile. They're no longer segregated. They come together and they create something new. It's like two different colors of paint swirling together, creating something new. And our inability to do this is, I think, natural and innate to human beings because we fear and question and oppose the other very often. But I think it's been amplified due to social media and technology, which I'll explain in a moment. But I want to use one of my mentors, Daryl Davis, as an example here. Daryl Davis is one of my heroes, and he practices external pendulation with the other. External pendulation with the other is something I came up with. I'm doing it right now as I speak with you. And it simply means I allow myself to get curious about people who I other, who I fear, who I dehumanize, so that I can free myself from hatred and free myself from bias and perhaps create transformation if it's possible. Daryl Davis is my hero because for the last 40 years, he, as a very tall, big black man, goes to KKK rallies willingly to curiously listen to the leaders, to listen to their beliefs, to listen to their opinions about him and his ethnicity. And he does it from a place of very sturdy sense of self, where he knows they don't know him. So he knows this has nothing to do with him. He knows it has to do with them. And in his curiosity, in his lack of tension and yelling and vitriol and dehumanizing of them, they pick up on his softness and they get curious. I did a whole interview with Daryl Davis. You can listen to it. We'll put it in the episode details. But you can also check him out on his channel or on YouTube. There's lots of amazing interviews and videos with him. But over the last 40 years, he has, without trying, converted 200 KKK leaders and members out of the KKK just through his relationship with them. He is the prime example that words don't have to create harm, that negative, hateful opinions don't have to create danger. He has that capacity. Now, am I saying you should go meet a white supremacist or someone who is vehemently opposed to homosexuals in a dangerous way? Never. The beauty of the internet is we get to do this from the comfort and safety of our homes, which I'm going to get into in a moment. Charlie Kirk's assassination, his murder, rocked me, not just because he was killed, which was, a shock because I just didn't expect him to be, but because of the response. Seeing people who share my values, who believe in gun reform. I don't believe in gun bans, but gun reform. Mental health checkups for people who own guns. Good collective education and wisdom around mental health when you walk around with a gun or when you think of owning one. I see guns as privileges, not rights. I think it's a privilege to walk around with something that could harm someone like that if you don't have the mental capacity to harness that power, that privilege in the right way. I'm looking to people who hashtag ceasefire in Gaza, who hashtag end the war, who hashtag gun reform, who are interested in social justice and restorative justice and prison reform. And I see those same people popping a cork in celebration when someone is killed by a bullet, someone they disagreed with, someone who felt dangerous to them because of their opinions. So there's a disappointment for me in seeing the lack of integrity of holding on to your values no matter what. And that's why I'm speaking about this radical rehumanizing. Radical just means to the root. To me, radical means no exceptions. So when I say radical rehumanizing, I say I humanize anyone I dehumanize regardless of the situation. And I'll open this up with a great question that my friend and colleague Gray Doolin wrote. They wrote on Instagram the other day. Gray writes, "If you can feel dehumanized by a stranger on the internet, let's talk about the sturdiness of your self-concept and self-regard." That's a powerful statement, a powerful prompt. Because what's happening with the internet is it has this incredible capacity and ability to connect us, and it has an incredibly potent capacity and ability to disconnect us. I believe people cheering for his assassination or in response to it are people who have been so practiced unknowingly of dehumanizing him and anyone like him. But I'm talking about him right now because that's what just happened. They've been practiced in seeing their algorithm agreeing with their bias. This has been the fear of social media for people who invented it for decades, is the algorithm would reflect back to you biases you already have, and it would create a sense of almost like mental thought atrophy, where you can't even fathom of another option. You can't even fathom of another existence or another opinion outside of your own. So when you're confronted with an opinion outside of your own, it actually feels violent because it's so shocking to your body. Your body has a stress response or a threat response, just like as if you were in a traumatic, dangerous situation. And that adrenaline hijacks the brain and makes us very narrow-minded. So I find it important to see, collectively speaking, we have a lot of young people, because I primarily see the cheering coming from young people. A lot of young people over the last 15 years were raised with the internet. They were raised with tablets and iPhones and social media. I know some 9-year-olds that have their own YouTube accounts, for example. That means they were raised with an algorithm. They were raised with reflections of what they agree with already coming back to them. They were raised with thinking the world thinks like them, and people who don't maybe shouldn't be part of the world, which is a dangerous conversation to open up. Because in America, free speech is very important, and I love free speech. And just as hateful and possibly threatening and overwhelming and offensive free speech can be, it's also the reason why we have gay marriage. It's also the reason why we have choice in some states around abortion. It's also the reason why we have desegregation and interracial marriages. It's why I exist, because my brown-skinned Puerto Rican grandfather was able to marry and have children with my light-skinned German grandmother. Being able to talk about things and live out things that are offensive and seemingly hateful to people is essential for a free, pluralistic, diverse society. But those things can't happen if you don't have capacity for it. If your body can't handle the charge that comes up with being disagreed with or witnessing something that is offensive to you, that charge will go from being a little kind of blip in your day to actually feeling like you're under threat. And then we go into the dehumanizing of a person. I feel threatened by you when I see you say something online. So now I go down the rabbit hole of other people who feel threatened by you, and I learn more about you through their perception. This is a trauma bond like no other. Connecting and finding commonality in people who equally oppose who and what you oppose. It just cements your own belief systems even more. What I find really fascinating is when I purposely look for people who disagree with me, who think different from me, who have really good reasons for beliefs that I don't have, it actually cements my belief systems in a more secure way because I'm able to test them out. I get to see, well, let me hear 10 other perspectives about something I never even thought about around abortion, for example. And I'll watch months and months and months of material from pro-life activists or pro-life people. And I'll learn so much. I'll understand why they're pro-life. I'll agree with some of their pro-life philosophies and opinions. I'll even understand why federally people are really triggered by tax dollars going to certain places that fund abortions when they religiously or personally or spiritually oppose it. It all makes sense. And I feel settled understanding them. I feel more open to them. I can connect to their fears or their beliefs or what's sacred to them. And I'm still pro-choice. My beliefs have not changed. They've just expanded. And this is the beauty of connection, connecting through difference. You get to test out your beliefs. And this is why I say Gray's prompt, which I'm going to say again. If you can feel dehumanized by a stranger on the internet, let's talk about the sturdiness of your self-concept and self-regard. That's the piece that we're missing in this recent, I believe, 15 years, especially the generation that grew up in the last 15, 20 years. I need to test the sturdiness of my self-concept and my self-regard, rather than shut down and shut out people that, let's say, cause insecurity in me. As someone who's bisexual, I used to feel disgusting when someone would feel disgusted by homosexuality. I would join them in their disgust because I felt disgusted by my own. I had my own latent homophobia internalized living in me. Understandably, growing up Catholic in a very conservative town. So when someone would have anti-gay rhetoric, I would feel personally attacked. I would feel shamed. All of those sensations in me were signals of how unsturdy my own self-concept, my own self was around my sexuality. Once I finally realized that in my 20s and was able to work with it, I got to be with the part that was disgusted and had shame and had judgments and had questions and wondered if this was natural and if I was okay. And instead of hiding from those questions, I dove into them. So then when I would see a conservative having anti-gay rhetoric, it wouldn't trigger me anymore. I would simply disagree, but I wouldn't walk away feeling shamed or disgusted. Being exposed to their concepts that went against my own expanded myself. It deepened myself. It increased my self-esteem. The algorithm has taken that away. We don't easily find people disagreeing with us. The only way a lot of people find people who disagree with us is through people who agree with us, meaning you'll see little cherry-picked clips of a person saying certain things that are inflammatory to prove the point we already have against them. So we atrophy our imaginative mind, our curiosity even more by doing that. And it's become practices we go through, or I should say it's become a practice for most people, hours and hours and hours a day, scrolling and listening and agreeing and liking and teaching this algorithm, unbeknownst to us, to consistently agree with us. Your algorithm is fawning with you. So I took the advice of Jaron Lanier, brilliant man, you should look into him, Jaronlanier. He has a book called, I believe it's called 10 Arguments for Leaving Social Media. It's brilliant stuff. I took his advice, which was fuck with the algorithm. Look up things that oppose your personal values to not atrophy your mind and to keep the algorithm confused. And that's what I started doing 5 years ago. And this is where Charlie Kirk comes in for me. In 2021, I started doing a radical rehumanizing process where I would sit in my bedroom a couple hours a day when I had the time, maybe a couple hours a week if I didn't have a lot of time each day. And I would watch YouTube videos specifically from right-wing commentators who I was triggered by. And Charlie Kirk was the one I found who triggered me the most. This is 2021. I saw little clips of him through left-wing media outlets. I heard, ideas of him being a white supremacist, being a misogynist, forcing young girls to have babies if they were sexually assaulted and impregnated, all these really horrible things. And I thought, what a horrible human being. So I said, hey, that's the one I'm going to watch. So I watched hours and hours of his debates. And I was fascinated. The same thing happened in my body that happened when the person who sexually assaulted me died. I started feeling open to him. Not open to his beliefs as if they were going to change mine, but open to him as a person. I started being interested in what informs these opinions of his. I would watch him from a somatic perspective, not an ideological one, but a somatic perspective, how his body was in the chair as he talked, how he held the microphone. And I was shocked to see 90% of the time a very well-regulated person, even talking about some of the most charged topics. I would see people come up to the microphone looking like they were ready to battle him, being really angry, and him responding in a really gentle way, and then them settling down. I was watching a right-wing activist co-regulating with a left-wing activist. I was watching transmutation. It got to the point where I wasn't even listening to the beliefs anymore. I was so amazed by differences coming together and transforming. The issue is with social media, and I don't know if Charlie's team is part of this issue. I haven't looked into it enough. But when we put out blips, reels, shorts about the work we do, we tend to pick the most dopamine-rich material, the most agitating, adrenalizing material. And that's what a lot of people get to know us through. That's what a lot of people click on. The algorithm and the currency of engagement on social media thrives on dysregulation. It's not people relaxing when they watch a cat video or a meditation. It's people that are getting heightened. That's what drives and feeds the algorithm. So cherry-picked clips of him saying things he actually said about Black lesbians and DEI, about if his daughter was forcibly pregnated at 10, would he want her to have the baby? And he said yes. This was a question someone asked him in a debate. Even down to gay marriage, him believing marriage between a man and a woman. These clips were taken in very specific context to create anger and controversy and outrage, which fuels the algorithm. So part of a rehumanizing practice with someone who's triggering you is to watch them in long form videos. Listen to them in long form podcast. Listen to their humanity, not just see their performance. I spent the whole summer watching his videos, finding I agreed with him on some things. I vehemently disagreed with him on others. I still do disagree with him on some things. But I saw a person. I didn't see a white supremacist. I didn't see any hate at all. I saw tenacity. I saw audacity. Sometimes I saw arrogance. Most of the time, I saw a well-regulated person who thrived with difference, who invited it. And that was really moving for me. And when I felt my body soften to him, I stopped watching his videos. And I didn't watch one since until I heard last week about him being killed. And I share that with you because it's amazing that he was one of the figures that helped me, because I humanized him. And so when I would see people like him or people who believed what he believed, I didn't walk around with a tension in my chest anymore. I didn't have a hard time sleeping. I wasn't overeating out of being stressed. I wasn't talking badly about him or people like him to everyone I spoke with. I just didn't give it any power because it didn't scare me anymore. I didn't feel overwhelmed. And what I want to welcome you to do, and I'm going to do right now with you, is to consider if Charlie Kirk for you was someone that triggered you. If you find yourself as someone who is celebrating his death, or there are people like him in your personal world or in the public world that trigger you. The way you start rehumanizing somebody, not agreeing with them, not allowing them into your life, not even liking them, but rehumanizing them, is you have to look for the opposite of your story. You have to get curious about what is sacred for them and what is sacred for me. And can I be open to two different opposing beliefs being sacred for both of us? Bill Riddick is another one of my mentors. Bill Riddick was in a film. He was portrayed by somebody in a film called Perfect Enemies. And it's an incredible story about Durham, North Carolina, I believe in the early 70s. It was one of the last schools that was still segregated between whites and blacks. And he developed something called the charrette process, where he would sit down with people for, I believe it was 10 days, and it'd be this long, let's hear each other out and see if we can find commonality and connection. And he taught me, based on this experience he had, well, I'll tell you the experience first. Imagine that you're in a high school gymnasium. On one side are KKK members and white supremacists who are for segregation. On the other side are the black people of that community and their allies who are for desegregation. So first, just let that sink. There are people that can't even stand what they see online. These people willingly got in a room together for 10 days to talk and connect and be curious and argue and debate. So it takes a lot of capacity already. What happened was, about halfway through the charrette process, the KKK leader, who was kind of representing the white space, if you will, had this tremendous experience with the black woman who was trying to desegregate the school. And one of the experiences were he had KKK paraphernalia set up in a hallway on a table. And these black boys came up and were fooling with the table and throwing everything and ripping the stuff. And the woman who was for desegregation came out and said, "What are you doing? Put that together right now. That's not ours." Even though it was against her, this material on the table, she made these boys respect someone else's thing they find sacred. And Bill Riddick told me this is the root, the base of his philosophy with conflict, is you start resolving conflict, you start transmuting difference, by understanding what I hate about you is sacred for you, and what you hate about me is sacred for me. And when you can go into a conversation or a YouTube video or your mind with that, your power is endless. So I use him as an example because he taught me this, to go into spaces and places and videos with a curiosity of what's sacred to you. So I want to show you some video clips, because most of us on the left have only seen cherry-picked videos of Charlie doing something chaotic, seemingly, or saying something cruel, and we think that's all he is, just like the individual thinks they are anxious. I'm going to show you some things, and I want you to notice in your body what part of you tenses up against it because you don't want to let it in, and what part of you softens and actually starts humanizing him naturally. So this first clip is him on a morning show, and it's his daughter running up to him for a big hug and him hugging her and him having so much joy. I just want you to focus on his face and the joy he has as he hugs her, and see where you can feel that in your body. This next clip is interesting because a lot of people see Charlie Kirk as a transphobe because he had very, very firm opinions on transgenderism. What they don't cherry pick about him being a transphobe is that he sat down for an hour with my friend, transsexual icon, Buck Angel. And after that, they had conversations, and Charlie would invite people like Buck to many of his dinners and many of his engagements so they could have a diversity of opinion there. And in this interview, there's this one part that I watched that helped me in my humanizing of Charlie Kirk, where Buck Angel says, "I almost committed suicide," and Charlie Kirk says, "I'm glad you didn't." Have a listen or a watch.
I was suicidal. I tried to commit suicide 2 times. I was put in a mental hospital. Thank you, my friend.
Someone who's truly transphobic doesn't look at someone who's a transsexual and say, "I'm glad you didn't commit suicide." They don't shake their hands. They don't laugh with them. They don't have an open debate and an openness in listening to someone's opinion. He disagrees with his transsexualism, but he doesn't reject him as a human. It's very important to see, and that clip helped me a lot when I was rehumanizing him. This anti-gay piece is really powerful to me, because a lot of people told me in my DMs when I was writing about humanizing Charlie Kirk, how could you humanize someone that was so against gay people, queer people, bisexual people like me? And I said, I don't see him as being against that. I did in 2021, but when I started listening to him more, I realized he's not against the individual who's gay. He personally doesn't believe in gay marriage. Let him not believe in gay marriage. I personally don't believe in only straight marriage. So we both have different beliefs, and they're sacred to us for different reasons. This clip is really powerful because it's a man going to one of his events who is extremely actually anti-gay, and he's challenging Charlie, saying, how can you be a Christian? How can you be a conservative if you're okay with gays being in the conservative movement and in the Republican Party? And just have a listen to this 2-minute clip about what Charlie says to him and how he counters some of this. It's pretty profound.
If you had your way, what would you do with gay people in America?
What would I do with them? I wouldn't.
Yeah, because they're not allowed in the conservative movement, so would you just kick them out anytime they show up at a Republican Party? If you were in charge, like, what would you say? You can't be part of the Republican Party.
If somebody is advocating for being openly homosexual, yeah, they should not be part of the conservative movement.
So I just want to go through the list. Guy Benson, no place in the conservative movement. Dave Rubin, no place in the conservative movement. Peter Thiel, no place in the conservative movement. So that, just to go down the list.
If they are supporting open homosexuality.
So I'm going to ask a very respectful question, as respectfully as I can. What does what they do in their private life concern you so much that you have to go up in front of a crowd? And
it is against God. That is
so let me ask you a question.
Are you a Christian or not?
Do we live in a theocracy, yes or no? No, do we live in a theocracy?
You said you're a Christian. I
am a Christian. And do you know what? And guess what? I will say this. Part of being a Christian is appropriately interpreting what the theological says for the individual, but also means to be long-suffering and patient and loving and kind. Jesus Christ talked to all people. Jesus Christ went and did his ministry through Judea and Samaria, and he had dinner with tax collectors, and he had dinner with prostitutes, and he did his ministry in every part of the Mediterranean. What it means to be a Christian, my friend, is to be open-minded but firm in your beliefs, so you can have that belief. But if you say there's something inherently wrong with communicating or associating just because they make different personal decisions than you, sir, are not a conservative. Thanks for being here tonight.
And then I want to show you just a clip of his very good friend, who was also his bodyguard, who was a black man named Tatum, weeping at Charlie's death. Just see a couple seconds of this. Now pause and just see any parts of you that can feel a softness, that can feel an openness, that can even feel a surprise of, I've never seen this side of him. I didn't know he was open to these things. I've never seen him actually talk to a transsexual or defend gay people. It's the last thing you would think of him. That's what I thought, at least. But see if you can feel any part of yourself soften to him, even if it's tiny. Because this somatic softening, that's the beginning of rehumanizing. I can say to you all right here, me, Luis, right now, there are things about Charlie Kirk I will always disagree with. There are beliefs I disagree with. There are the ways he said things I disagree with. And I can feel in my heart he was still a human being. He was not a politician. He was not corrupt like a lot of our politicians. And his death is something I could never celebrate, because it's a fellow human being who's not fawning, who's promoting and expressing free speech, who's sitting relaxed behind a table, letting people come up to him to debate him. There's no force. There's nothing involuntarily happening. Charlie's death, and even more important to me, the reaction of his death. I shouldn't say even more important, but what really made me more nauseous was the reaction to his death, is a result of our atrophy. It's a result of our mental imagination heart atrophy, where we have been so practiced at this point in only orienting toward what we agree with, and in that unknowingly dehumanizing others and deeply, deeply rooting into our own biases. To have a really flexible mind and open heart, and for me, a very delicious, soft, pleasurable body to be in, one has to question their own beliefs and invite people into their lives that question their own beliefs, because that's what promotes a sturdiness in self. That's what actually teaches you how much you believe what you believe. And it's terrifying to be wrong. I've been wrong so many times these last 10 years as I've gone into these rehumanizing experiences, particularly with people on the right. And I'm amazed at what I'm wrong about. I'm amazed. What we're seeing with the algorithm, with the use of social media, is just a parallel reflection of the traumatized body and brain. Traumatized bodies, traumatized brains have an excessive amount of adrenaline. We are stimulated. We are hypervigilant. We are looking to prove that there's a threat somewhere, because this energy is trying to express itself, liberate itself. And it gets to do that in crisis. This is why a lot of you who have trauma and chronic stress feel like you can't do anything in the world unless there's crises, and you mobilize very easily. Because adrenaline is looking for the thing. Adrenaline forces our brain to turn to the survival animal, and it's looking for what's about to hurt us. And social media contributes to that because of the adrenalized, dopamine-rich experience of watching things that irritate us, of publicly justifying the dehumanization of our fellow brothers and sisters. It creates a strange association of the social with the adrenalized and the dopaminergic response, instead of a soft, easy, curious, fluid feeling with people. It's changing how we see each other, what we expect of each other, how we speak to each other. We can use social media from our traumatized brains and YouTube and any kind of technology from the traumatized brain to deeply prove our biases and further disconnect us, or we can use it as a counter vortex. We can use it to find opposite ideas. We can use it to expand our thinking. We can use it to voluntarily, consciously challenge our biases and what we think is true. So we can develop deeper self states, more sturdy self-esteem and self-concepts, and much more capacity for open debate, for differing opinions, and for even offensive speech. The First Amendment, freedom of speech, is not to talk about the weather. Freedom of speech is to talk about things that are offensive and controversial. And like I said before, if we didn't have it, we wouldn't have so many beautiful things we love on the left. It's offensive, controversial, uncomfortable free speech that has led to so much transformation in our society in a relatively short amount of time. But the integrity of free speech can't be conditional. It can't be for one side or another. It can't be just for people that feel comfortable with it or people who don't. I've seen as a trauma therapist how many people really truly recover and heal from trauma when they're able to go into situations that trigger them rather than avoid it. And the same thing happens in the body. It starts there. If I can't go into my stress, if I can't hold my grief, if I can't be with my frustration or jealousy, I will have to soothe. I will have to leave myself to distract myself from a state I can't be with. The ability to be with discomfort, with controversy, with things that oppose us, that's what builds resilience. That's what builds actual safety in the self and that self-esteem and that self-concept that my friend Gray was talking about. So please consider, if anything from this video, I'm not trying to make you like Charlie Kirk. I'm not trying to change your opinions. If you've heard anything I've said, my beliefs haven't changed very much. My response to differing beliefs have. I don't see disagreement as harm. I don't see speech as hateful. I don't see someone saying something I disagree with as an attack. I see it as an opportunity to get very curious and test out my own, test out how much integrity I have in what I believe. And I ask you, if this interests you, to listen to this again, do some of the practices I'm talking about, and even if Charlie Kirk is a trigger for you, watch some of those counter vortex videos I just showed you. See what it's like to feel a difference. What's it like to feel things that open up inside of you when you see him? Or something you thought about him that might be wrong now that you saw these other videos. Or do with somebody else. If it's a news anchor that bothers you, or a celebrity, or your own parents, use your mind if it's not someone on the internet. What else is true about them? But if you are using technology, try to use it from your body. Feel when it's causing you to constrict and be against someone. Feel when you're posting out of a vitriolic, adrenalized rage and you're not really in your body or mind. Feel when you're feeding yourself things that make you hurt and hate and shut you down. Because we have this incredible privilege in this lifetime with this technology to expand our consciousness and our hearts or contract them and create more atrophy, more division, and more hate. I'll end this by saying people don't need to have empathy for me in order for me to have empathy for them. People don't have to agree with me for me to be open to them. People don't owe me anything. I'm not entitled for people's beliefs or agreements. All I'm entitled to is my own ability to connect to myself and be responsible for what comes up in me and not attach that to another person. Please join my newsletter if you are moved by this, if you're curious by this, if you're annoyed by this and have some capacity to play with that, because I'm going to be doing much more work around embodying conflict and learning how to use somatics and nutrition and our own sense of self to navigate difference and offense and be curious in the face of that so we can really transmute. And I'll end finally by saying, I don't expect all of you to want to do this. This is my practice that moves me. I have the privilege of having an inner circle of friends that have the same practice. So I'm very lucky. And I love for anyone who's interested to come in and learn with us. But I don't expect it. I just wanted to share it. See where it goes for you. Use the comments below to tell me. And I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you for watching today's episode. Please like and subscribe if you found it useful. And let me know in the comments what you want me to cover next. I have developed a 4-week self-paced course that takes 18 years of my personal and professional experience and puts it into one place where you can easily and quickly learn the foundations of recovering from stress and trauma. How does the food you eat affect your stress levels? How do the relationships in your life create stress or peace? How does the relationship you have with your body allow you to feel happier and more settled? I will cover all this and so much more in this 4-week self-paced course. And the best part, it's self-paced. You don't have to sign up at a certain date or finish it at a certain time. It's yours for life, and it's waiting there for you when you're ready to finish it. Throughout this course, I'll be teaching you philosophies and practices that combine my 3 favorite modalities: somatic experiencing, embodied parts work, and nutrition. For more information on this course, click on the link in my episode details.